I was making a Community Wednesday video about a long-range M13 when I decided to make a more balanced M13 build. And then I ran into an issue that I had run into before, but kind of forgot about. So I did a little exploring, and I found out that this kind of is a thing. So I'm going to play you a clip real quick, and then I'm going to play it again in slow motion. Let me know if you can see any difference. If you couldn't really tell the difference between the two, other than the optics, then you would be right, because these are identical in ADS time for some reason, even though they have different attachments. Let's figure out what's going on here. Here's M13 build number 1. It's got Tempest Cyclone barrel, TAC laser, 60 round mags, stippled grip tape, and the M13 skeleton stock. It has a named down sight time of 16.67 milliseconds, captured at 60 frames per second. Here's the M13 build number 2. It's got the Tempest Cyclone barrel, a TAC laser, 60 round mags, stippled grip tape, but the APX5 holographic sight. At 60 frames per second, it also has a named down sight time of 216.67 milliseconds. So what's going on here? Let's take a look at the individual parts and find out. The M13 on its own has a standard ADS time of 233.33 milliseconds. If we look at all the parts that they share, the 60 round mag gives it about 8 extra milliseconds of ADS time, the Cyclone barrel 16.67 milliseconds, the stippled grip tape subtracts 16.67 milliseconds, the TAC laser subtracts 33.33 milliseconds, and then we can get into their special attachments. The skeleton stock subtracts 16.67 milliseconds, and the aim op reflex adds another 8. When we add up the parts of build number 2, we get a total of 216 milliseconds, which is pretty much 216 milliseconds that we got when we tried it out in the game. When we add up the parts for build number 1 though, we get 191.33 milliseconds, which is not the 216 that we got when we tried it out. You could say this is probably due to frame rounding, but even so, it should have been at the 200 millisecond mark instead of the 216 millisecond mark, because one frame less would have been 200. So what's going on here? If we remove the optic and we decide to swap the stock for one that reduces it by 33 milliseconds instead of 16, we get this. 200 milliseconds. Now this made me think, what happens if we decide to drop it even more? That's how we get 183.33 milliseconds with the no stock attachment. This led me to believe that the threshold that you must cross in order to get a lower ADS is based on the barrel you have and not the gun by itself. At first I thought it was a percentage of the base gun, but you'll see why I got some different thoughts. I was messing with the Holger trying to make a hypermobility LMG build, and I kept running into a problem. My ADS wasn't what it should have been. With the build that you currently see on screen, my ADS time should have been around 174.33 milliseconds. In reality though, it came to a very familiar 216.67 milliseconds. To make things better, I stacked every single ADS attachment that I could onto the Holger, and I got a surprisingly fast 150 milliseconds, but it should be way lower than what it is. This led me to the final conclusion that there is an ADS cap on your build, based on the attachment combination that you have. There is probably a limit, a hard limit, like we found with the Holger, of the maximum ADS attachment, but it's still an attachment combination nonetheless. So after testing all these things, I started looking to other attachment types, so aiming stability and recoil mainly, and it's a lot of work, but it seems to be a similar thing, and I'm not going to get exact numbers because these are a lot harder to get numbers for, so I'm just going to take a guess and say that it follows a similar pattern. It's not additive, but it is pretty similar. And the final thing to take away is don't stack too hard on a single type of attachment, because your build will suffer. And you should use your gun's strengths. So for example, the Holger is already pretty mobile, so don't try to go too hard on it, because you'll lose so much bullet velocity and recoil control, which is another one of its strengths. So have fun with it, and yeah, try to make some fun builds. Next week I'm going to talk about off-meta builds, and I was hoping that the FFAR and the AUG would have been nerfed a little more than they did this week, but I'm still going to go ahead and make the video next week. So tune in next week for that, and if you enjoyed this video or if you learned anything from it, please click like And if you got any questions or comments, comment down in the comment section down below, and if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.